I'm Avery.
And I'm Mel.
This is the Veda Lounge podcast.
All things Vedic, cosmic, and magic.
For yoga teachers, entrepreneurs, creatives, and coming back to your own center.
We explore themes on living like you practice to knowing your nature.
Join the conversation for an embodied homecoming to illuminate your radiance.
Through getting nerdy with Vedic sciences and self-discovery, cozy into your cosmic cadence. Hello, welcome back to the Veda Lounge podcast. It's Mel here, and I am so excited to introduce a dear friend of mine to you guys who has inspired me, and the work that he brings to San Antonio is such medicine, and it's so sacred. So welcome, Lando. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mel. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, and I believe you hold so much, not just like talked about wisdom, but you live it. Like the things that you do, you're somebody that really is in the community who does, you have like this side of the house that's the yoga, but also your work with integrative medicine. I would love for you to kind of share with our community a little bit about your background and what led you to here being a yoga studio owner of House of Rhythm and all the things. So if you can kind of share your background.
Okay, so I'm a yoga studio owner. I own House of Rhythm. I'm also a medical practitioner. I co-own Willow OBGYN with my partner Kelly Morales, and we've been doing that for we're going on 10, or no, we're going on 11 years already. Um, House of Rhythm we've owned since 2019. Uh, what kind of led me into this? So previously in a previous life, I am a registered nurse, practiced. I worked in the operating room for a number of years, went to the emergency room, and then through some luck, I was able to get into the OBGYN world by becoming a high risk OB case manager back in 2009. And that led me directly into becoming an owner of a OBGYN clinic. As far as yoga goes, I was in the Army. I was in the Army for approximately 16 years. And during that time, I ended up with some pretty bad injuries. One was an injury to my back in 2009 during, I was in the Republic of Georgia, and I hurt my back there. I was looking for a way to deal with the pain. I went through everything. I'd seen pain management specialists. I'd seen family practice specialists. I have done acupuncture, physical therapy, steroid shots. I even had a nerve ablation, and all those things just kind of, it kept me at a level, but it never resolved anything. Summer 2017, I had a really bad back episode where I blew out another disc. So now I had 4 discs and a fracture. And I had gone to a Rosti just to relieve the pain. And the physical therapist that was there suggested going into yoga. And so I was like, okay. I was a little bit nervous. I was a lot nervous. I was scared to jump into that realm. I was afraid that I wouldn't know what to do. It wasn't something that I had ever done before besides Bikram, like in the early 2000s. And so I hired one of your graduates and to be a private yoga instructor. And that was fantastic. So, having private instruction during that time, she really helped me get into my body. She really helped me get into the injury. Like, we were very specific on the way we would work. And so my initial goal was to deal with the pain that I was experiencing just so I could live, you know. But then also I wanted to be able to take a group class. I was very nervous about going into a group class. So, she worked with me for about 6 months, and I went and I attended my first group class, and I was totally prepared. I was over prepared for it. But I fell in love with group yoga, and I found myself like in the greatest shape of my life. It was fantastic. I was pretty much pain free. I was in great shape, and I found a new passion So I started just going to yoga studios, and I went to all the local ones, Five Points Local. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah.
Black Swan had just opened like in 2018. And there was like, of course, all the little ones in the gym stuff. And I started traveling, and every place that I would go to, I would experience a different yoga studio. I wanted to go check out the scene. So in Honolulu, in Las Vegas, in Boulder, Colorado, in Denver, Colorado, Washington, D.C., New York City, uh, any place that had a yoga community, I wanted to experience it. So I was really into traveling yoga. In 2018, me and my wife, Kelly, were about to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary. And we booked the trip to New York City. Of course, I wanted to check out the yoga there. And I fell in love with what they did over there in New York. There was a little yoga studio that was right next to our hotel that offered hip hop yoga. And they did it by candlelight. And it was this tiny hot room, and they'd pack it up with like 30 people in this little itty bitty space. It was fantastic. I just loved it. It's like they didn't have mirrors. It was by candlelight. The music was powerful. I never had been in downward dog and wanted to shake my butt. I just had such a great time doing that. And Kelly did too. And so we ended up just going to that studio our entire trip. So we spent a week in New York City, and that was the only yoga studio that we went to. We went every day. We loved it. And on the flight home, Kelly was like, that would be really cool if there was something like that in San Antonio. And I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, it'd be really neat if somebody were bringing something like that. And she was like, Lando, you should bring something like that. And 9 months later, we opened up House of Rhythm, and the rest is kind of history. So I didn't have any other than being a yoga enthusiast. Uh, my 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 jump into yoga studio ownership was just that. I wasn't a yoga instructor. I didn't really have a strong yoga background other than taking a lot of group classes. And my philosophy was just I like the feeling that I get from being in this space. I like receiving the energy from the people that are surrounding me. I loved being embodied. I didn't know it was called being embodied, but I love being embodied, being like right in my body. I don't suffer. I have ADHD, and I have the kind of ADHD that just it's it's pretty powerful. So it just leaves me, out in outer space. Like my mind's always running. There's a lot of noise that is going in. I'm very like sensitive to stimulus. And I would get that 1 hour of peace every single day. And that was just my sanctuary. That was my home. So that's how I got into yoga studio ownership. We just celebrated our 5th year at House of Rhythm, and it's going strong. We are doing new stuff. We have a YTT that we're about to start. We have fantastic workshops. We're doing expanding our offerings. We offer a yoga sculpt class now. It's just grown, and I have like a wonderful community that's surrounded by me, like lots of great people, fantastic instructors, a lot of Mel graduates, and and it's just been wonderful. It's been a wonderful experience.
What I love so much about what you guys do is how you innovate. Because a lot of people who know me and my vibe, it's like taking the yoga and how do we innovate it in a way that is relatable and meaningful to unique populations. And I feel like you guys have really done a phenomenal job with that. And I love how you pointed out the journey of taking flavors in different places, because one of the biggest misconceptions that we see with yoga is people have one experience and then they assume that all practices are that way. When you've heard me talk about, it's like ice cream, there's a lot of different flavors, and to go geographically to different locations and see the differences as well, and even within one community there's a ton of differences. So I think about also too, because you're a DJ, right?
Yes, yes. And so like bringing that whole music component, I remember like elevator pitching the idea for House of Rhythm to people that knew me and strangers, and it always came back to you'd be perfect for this. I mean, you love yoga, you love music. People imagine me like when I would pitch it that I would be there like DJing the DJing the flows and everything like that. It's not quite like that, but there really is that sensibility. Music is part of our practice at House of Rhythm. It really is like a huge part. We have a club quality sound system, and I encourage all of the instructors to be authentic with their playlists, not to just create a single playlist and rest on that, for their entire time there. I encourage them to innovate, and I encourage them to be creative with their music choices, and they are. Um, it's so great. We have a monthly playlist that we put out of the instructors' favorites. It's called Monthly Vibes, and we put it out on Spotify. And I learn a lot about music. Every song, every track that's ever on these playlists that the instructors submit every month, they're banging. It's just like a wonderful experience, wonderful journey.
I've never heard of anybody doing that except for you guys. That's such a brilliant way to share the practice, not just in the studio, but ways that people can bring that essence with them. And I agree with you that music, I mean, we could get nerdy in the aspect of nada yoga and the yoga of sound and how Vedic teachings are really big around vibration and whether it's our own voice or frequency and how that impacts us. But I think just for being human and coping, like you guys know I'm a poet. Lando, you know I love poetry. There is
Yes.
something that happens when you marry poetry with sound, or you have this beautiful orchestration of movement with beat that I think it's so natural. Like it's so natural as
It
humans.
it does something to your nervous system, right? Like music, you can use music to control the atmosphere, to control the mood. You can have it like in the background and just kind of like floating around there, just giving you a little bit of, a soundscape, right? Or you can have it front and center, and it could like, you could be moving to the beat, like we're doing your vinyasa, one breath, one movement. But imagine that with, the kick drum, like with every breath, it's all those things. You can bring that, even silence, even the use of silence during a yoga flow is music, right? So yeah, it's a huge part, or it could be no part, but for us, that's one of our signature things is the music.
Well, it's just the intentionality too, I think, as well, that makes it so beautiful. And I know also you guys do a lot with breath work. And for those who are not familiar with breath work, and I know that I mean, it is pranayama, right? But I'm
Yes.
curious about your journey with breath work and kind of for people who don't know what breath work workshops and classes are, what is that?
My journey with breathwork. So, like I said before, when I opened the studio, I wasn't a yoga teacher. I didn't have any background. About a year into it, I went to go do a 200 hour. And so I got my 200 hour, and then you offered a 300 hour at our studio. And of course, I was going to try it. And so I dropped into to your class, and during that journey, you showed us so many things, right? Like you showed us so many things that I hadn't experienced before, and how you could make your practice your own, and to just like find your passion and then bring it into your practice. And during that time, I was just looking for my passion. And just out of the blue, somebody suggested somatic breath work. And it was perfect because I needed something, to do my final project for. It looked like something I would be interested in. It looked like something that would be fun. And went for it. So I went to a workshop in Austin, Texas to learn about somatic breath work. I had no idea about it, and I had a profound awakening. Like I discovered stuff about myself during that weekend that I didn't even know existed. It opened up a whole new part of me. And so to tell you a little bit about somatic breath work. So somatic breath work, it's very similar to uh, the other breath works that are out there. So I'm sure you're familiar with the holotropic. There's why can't I think of his name? He's uh
Wim Hof. Are you thinking about Wim Hof?
Wim Hof, yeah. Wim
Yes.
Hof, yes. So there's Wim Hof, and what these modalities do, it helps you get into your body. It helps you be able to control your nervous system, control your respirations, control different parts of you by using breath, right? In somatic breath work, what they want you to do is they want you to become embodied, to tap into your body. They want you to raise up your energy, raise up like your anxiety, raise up your stress levels, so that you can identify this is something that's going on inside of my body. And while you're raising things up, things come up. Traumatic events that may have happened in your childhood or in your young adult life, unresolved trauma, stress that you're experiencing. Sometimes, it's just, that you're in flight or fight your entire life and you don't realize it. So all these things come up. And
Yeah.
while you're having these things come up, you have, I call them downloads, but they're basically realizations or things that you realize that weren't apparent to you before, that you can meditate on, that you can think about. And I figured out stuff about myself that I hadn't realized before. It threw me on a whole nother path. So once you raise yourself, then you learn how to take yourself and bring yourself down. So the main purpose of somatic breath work is it teaches you how to recognize stress, how to recognize when you're in your fight or fight, when you're in your sympathetic, and for you to consciously or unconsciously bring yourself down, put yourself in your parasympathetic to calm yourself down because you or your body recognizes, hey, I'm stressed out. Let me start breathing. Let me do this thing. And it works. It's fantastic. Like that's the main thing. But so many other things come up with it.
I was gonna say it just can be so intense in really euphoric ways, but then also like whoa, and then being able to activate the part of ourselves that can bring us back. And I know like with Wim Hof stuff or certain things that are out there, some of it's really structured of like, this is what we're doing and why. What I like about a lot of somatic breath work is that there is more room for this availability of recognizing those things and it's through a lot of the like more inhale based stuff, right, that takes you
Yes.
to those edges. and then
Yes.
and then you have those moments where then you can lengthen the exhale and you're soothing the body, and then we activate, and you leave absolutely buzzing. It's crazy, and that's all within us already.
Yes. Yes. And every experience is different, right?
Yeah.
So your body tells you what you need, and it figures things out for you. And the realizations that I had, that the things that I realized, it transformed my life. Like one of the things that from the very first time, um, in the somatic work, where they call it an expression, right? So you have an expression. And an expression can be the release of trauma. It can be like a scream. It could be, movement of the body. It could be tears. It could be laughter. It could be anything. And what happened with me was tears. And so I was breathing, and I started feeling my face just kind of get
Yeah.
red, and my nose started getting stuffy, and there was this taste in my mouth that I recognized before. I just couldn't place it. And then I became a waterworks, just like tears started streaming down my face, and I'm like crying like a baby. And it was so odd being in a room full of people crying like that. and I felt strange doing it, but it felt so good to let it out. And everything was just coming out, just years and years and years of trauma, of stress, of, issues that I had had. And after I was done with that, I was like, I want more. And so that was the experience that I had. A few days later, as I'm just like thinking about my experience, I had thought back to like, when was the last time that I actually cried? When was the last time I had that experience before? And it turns out that it was like 30 years ago. I hadn't cried for over 30 years. And it was one of those things where I remember when it was that I cried. It was I had seen that movie with Tom Hanks and Antonio Banderas, Philadelphia. I don't know if you remember that. It's an old movie. Anyways, the protagonist dies in this movie, and it was really moving, and it was very sad, and I cried. And when I was crying, I was there with my girlfriend at the time, and she was like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you crying? Like, what's the matter with you? Are you gay or something?" Just like really just like shut it down. And it did, it shut down. Like, and I hadn't cried after that. And there was like other opportunities for me to do it, but like, as a man or as a person, there's not really an opportunity to do it. So like at a funeral, right? Like I remember one time I had that feeling come up when I was giving a eulogy for my uncle who had passed away, and I had to stifle it back because I was in front of my family, a whole group of people. So I kept that down. There'd be times like you'd go see a movie and, your throat gets a little bit raw. Yeah. And I would keep it down. And so from that, I realized that my kids don't cry. And I realized that my kids don't cry because I don't cry, and because I don't provide an environment for them to cry, right? Like it was such a big deal. Um, and so I tucked that away in the back of my head. And I was watching a movie with my youngest son, who's 12 now. I think he was 10 then. I was watching a movie with my youngest son, and we were sitting there, and it was a really good movie. And there was a part where it's meant for somebody to cry, right? And so I'm feeling that feeling in my throat, and I look over at my little boy, and his eyes are a little bit red, and he's like holding it back. And he looks at me, and then he straightens himself out. And I'm like, no, no, it's okay to be human. It's okay to cry. And he looked at me, and I have like a tear going down my face. And then he just started crying.
Oh,
It wasn't big, but it was something that I recognized that I didn't allow, right?
yeah.
Unconsciously. And 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 I wouldn't have known that about me, about my life, about my the way I raise my children, if it wasn't for this opportunity to stop, go inside my body, release some things, and then meditate on it later. And that's what somatic breathwork does.
It's so profound because even the example, which I mean, it's just so powerful because in our culture, we over identify with a lot of very natural things that, like, we're like, oh, that's weird or that's whatever. So we suppress these things. And something like crying, which in yoga philosophy, we say it's a version of pranayama. So it's actually very normal and natural in a yoga practice, or if we're doing a breathing exercise, if tears start to run down, because it's a natural somatic release. I mean, just like babies soothe and cry to regulate the nervous system, it's so normal for us to move energy that way. And I know, Lando, in class, you probably heard me say this, but I always say, like, crying's like using the bathroom. Like, it is as natural as pooping and peeing. And if we can start to normalize that, we don't have to be so emotionally constipated in our culture.
Oh
So
my gosh.
it's, yeah. Thank you for
I, s-
sharing that.
I still have a hard time with crying. It's like I'm always looking for an opportunity to have a release. and if it comes, it comes. It's not anything. I'm jealous of the people that are able to go to the parking lot, to the parking garage and have a cry in their car and then come back out and like, okay, I'm ready to face my day. I'm not there yet,
Well, and
but
I think with any, like just even our relationship with tension, right? Like that stuff comes in time as we begin to just notice the natural, whether it's the natural bubbling in the body to release tears, or again, I hate to be crude or weird, but like just like if we have a bowel movement or anything, like our bodies are going to tell us, but culturally and genetically, when there's been suppression, we're not as sensitive to the notifications our bodies will send us. And I
right.
think that whether it's somatic breath work, yoga practice, and especially moving with music, right? All of those things are going to build a relationship for us to reclaim the sensory voice of our experiences, not just the mental, but the sensory.
It is so wonderful that you put it that way. The way I like to say it is I get inside my body and I figure out what's going on. Um, I think an example, like for me, just like I'm able to get into my body easily. It can be as simple as like my wife like running her finger through my hair, right? Like that, bam, I'm there. And then once I'm in there, I can identify stuff. And it's fantastic. Like it changes the way that I approach the world. It changes the way that I approach my daily life. There's a story that I'm telling right now because it just happened to me like a few days ago, where I had gotten into I was driving home from taking the kids to school, and there was a traffic altercation, and it really stimulated me. It it amped me up. Like it kept throbbing in my head. I felt the tightness in my chest. My heart was beating really, really fast. I had red face, and rather than dwelling on this part of, the traffic altercation, somebody like flicking me off in traffic, I was focusing on what was going on inside of my body, and I was fascinated with it. And being there, like being able to be there inside of your body, then you can tell yourself, you can be aware and you're like, oh, this is what's going on. I can do this to change it. Sometimes it's just mind over matter. Let me just change the way I'm looking at something. Or it can be something as easy as I'm feeling really stressed right now. My body is giving stress right now. Let me take myself out of a situation, you know, like like having that control over your body, over your emotions, over your mood is amazing. And I think almost all somatic practices that allow you to become embodied, allow you to explore, discover stuff about yourself, can lead you down that path. And for somebody like me, somebody with ADHD, with a lot of noise going on, it's been life changing. It's wonderful, and I love it when people are new to it and they discover the different facets of it. So yeah, it's a journey, it's an experience. You can do somatic breath work. You can do any of the breath work practices and just be like, this is wonderful. The feeling that I'm feeling, you can leave it at that, and that's a winner right there. But then you add like the somatic experience, you add the learning, the awareness, and the reflection that you do afterwards. Like that's a whole different level. And I love it.
It threads it into our lives. And I'm sure you could probably relate to this as an entrepreneur, but a lot of times it's learning to ride discomfort. And even with what's going on in my world with some of the military stuff and the unknown with our future and just running a business in wild times, it's like being able to ride discomfort and not run away or not sabotage and do our own undoing, like there it teeters. And I think that a lot of people, when it comes to starting their business in yoga or putting themselves out there or doing these things, we actually through these practices really are bolstered in a way that we can ride with discomfort, and that actually leads to what sustains anything, because life is always going to flux and flow, and these practices are so powerful for helping us like not run away from the edge but ride it. And then it's a softer easy or season, and then it might get intense again, and then it's a softer season. It's like in a way, I feel like it helps so much for me as a business owner, and just the unknowns that we navigate in our life, all of us navigate, right? It's so relevant.
You say that, and I'm picturing like somebody surfing a wave. You know what I mean? Like riding on top of the wave, and it's like, okay, so as long as I can keep myself balanced on this board, as long as I don't become overwhelmed with everything, all these outside influences, as long as I can keep myself balanced,
Mm-hmm.
I can succeed, right? And the somatic work, it helps you with that tremendously.
It's so true too with the keeping you present as well. Like with that analogy, when you're talking about the somatic work, it brings us into the present, because then when all this noise is going on, it's like you know how to drop into what is here now, leverage what's here now, and just focus on that as you ride that wave, because eventually you're gonna get to the beach, or you're gonna get to the shoreline, and it's gonna be soothe again. But I think in a lot, because our culture is not very well regulated, and we're still learning how to, I think we're at the beginning of a really interesting new era in a lot of ways, because for so long this stuff has been looked at as woo woo or weird or weak, soft, whatever the word is. But we're starting to realize there's a huge advantage of being in relationship with our nervous system, not just for health, but for our goals and our relationships and all of these things.
Yes.
So it's like presence and like being able to work through those cycles. It's so important.
It really is. And so like it is, people do say it's woo woo, but when you come right down to it, right? If you are stressed out, if you are in fight or flight, you know, not only are you looking at things like myopically, like you're just trying to solve a particular problem with your monkey brain, right? But then also, it's like you have all this cortisol and all these stress hormones that are like pumping through your body, and you're irritable, and you're just not a pleasant person to be around, right? And so like we have this stress response for a reason, and we're given this stress response, to help save us from the saber-toothed tiger that's chasing us, or the woolly mammoth or whatever, which is great. But then afterwards, you need to be relaxed. You need to have a clear mind. It's like when you're in your rest and digest, you can think clearly. You're more present. You're a better person to be around. You can make better decisions. It's like your body is able to rest. It's able to, nurture itself. You're not filled with these hormones that, put fat on your body, that makes you want to pack things in and just like raise your blood pressure, and it hurts you, like it physically hurts you, right? And so in the past, you know, we didn't have a lot of the stressors. Like we're connected to these phones. On this phone right now, I can find out anything that's going on in the world, right? All the wars, all the famines, all the politics, all the mean people that are on social media. Like they're all there. They're all present. They're all right there, front and center. And then, we have to drive to our work, right? And we have to deal with traffic on 410, deal with other drivers. All this stuff puts us all highly elevated, and we stay in that place. And then you come into work, you're highly elevated, and maybe you're not performing as well as you should, right? And then you bring that home, and now you're not treating your partner the way you should. You're not treating your kids the way that you should. Things are in complete chaos, all because we're so amped up. We're so stressed out. that's not the way we should live. Our sleep's bad. We make bad decisions on food choices, just like all these things. And so we have like this high blood pressure, high fructose, high traffic, high information lifestyle that we're living, that our bodies aren't, that us as humans aren't supposed to be living like, 24/7. And so being able to come back, relax, not have to wait for those 2 weeks that you get, every year to go find yourself and go relax for 2 years out of the year. No, you can do it like right here, right now. Takes a minute, take 5 minutes, just release a little bit of that pressure, put yourself in a good place, and then go face the world clear-headed. Go be with your partner clear-headed, like be with your children clear-headed. Be inside your body clear-headed. It's wonderful. I think everybody needs to do it. Everybody really does need to do it. Not just somatic breath work, but like anything that gets you embodied, any somatic practice is.
I feel like yoga teachers, it's not just like on the mat where we're teaching, it's education and context for culture, because a lot of culture doesn't even realize that that's an option and that there's efficacy around taking 5 minutes in your day, or that when you're waiting in line, instead of being on your phone, you can just do this little tapping thing and actually like do this. It just these little touch-based things that we can thread into our lives, versus where there's a lot of misunderstanding that, oh, I need to find another hour, or I need to find this stuff all outside of ourselves, when really all these things outside of ourselves are just giving us data so we can discern what we want for experiencing within, because it's all within. One of the most fun things about making yoga accessible that I've discovered, and honestly, I did this kind of out of survival in the beginning because we didn't have yoga mats, right? So can't do yoga on yoga mats. I'm trying to bring this to a big population or to this place. We don't have yoga mats. Oh, well, we'll just do it on turf. We'll do it on the carpet. And what I found over the years of like removing access barriers is that the more you actually remove those access barriers around, I need to have the nicest whatever outfit, or that accessory, or that thing, that actually like all these things are homecomings. And then we realize that at the kitchen table, I can do my practices. And that's, I think one of the biggest gifts that yoga classes and yoga teachers can do is if we can give people the things that they can bring into their life, like the playlist y'all were talking about, or that you guys have, right? There's so many ways to touch base with this. So we are managing this very unnatural expression of humanity at this time. It's so weird.
Yes. So one of the things that being in this practice and like discovering different practices that I can bring into my own practice has done. So my partner Kelly, she's a physician. She's also the owner of Willow. She's the chief of the department at Methodist OBGYN, or OB. And so she's got a lot of things going on with her, and she's juggling she's got a lot of plates, but she's always like even keeled. She's such a wonderful person, but she is stressed. And being able to, at the end of the night, maybe like play a Tibetan bowl for her,
Yeah.
5 minutes, right? Or something that we're into. I don't know if you're familiar with Japanese shibari. It's the art of ropes. That it's a very somatic practice, and just sometimes just like putting a rope around her hands for a little bit and letting her just relax with her eyes closed.
It makes me think of like the aerial silks, even just like using our body weight, like just to hang. Like there's just something about that. Like
Yes,
weighted
yeah, exactly.
blankets.
Weighted blankets, sensory deprivation, like just like relaxing with a blindfold and just focusing on your breath, right?
Mm.
Like all those things doesn't take any time. It allows you to have that escape, and you can do it anyway. Any way. You can do it with props, without props. You can do it sitting down. You can do it standing up. You can do it in line. You can do it at home. You can do it at work.
So good.
You know. something that you bring in, and you taught me so many of these things that I wanted to go and explore and find others. And so, since YTT, what has it been? It's been a year and
Year
a
and a
little bit more than a year,
half.
almost a year and a half. Yeah, a year and a half. It's like the discoveries that I've made since then. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
This stuff really is, though, it's like an ever evolving process. And I think the biggest things for yoga teachers or yoga enthusiasts to remember is that what might be nourishing you in this season, it's okay if it changes and takes on new outfits or new domains. And for me, I've been teaching since 2012, and I have these moments where I'm like, man, like I've been teaching yoga classes a lot over the like just consistently. And how is it that I don't feel burnt out in the sense like I love diving into this stuff. And I think the reason is because I've allowed myself to evolve as a practitioner. The version of me, what my interests were 10 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago, very different to what I'm into today. And I've allowed things to evolve, and that innovation, I think, is so key for the sustainment of not only our work, but as a student, practitioner, it's like these new levels and layers you go down. There is no arrival. That's the biggest thing to debunk in yoga is there's no arrival, there's no hierarchy. There's just now. There's just what your preference is in the now moment. And like learning to befriend that and find safety and trusting ourselves in that. There is no hierarchy. There is no arrival. You're already there. It's already, you are your own center, and those things. I think that it allows us just to flow in the journey of yoga itself more spaciously.
That is beautiful, and that is so true. I think I do see a lot of I see a lot of practitioners that are looking for that awakening, or looking for that moment that that they have arrived at whatever it is that they're working on. So they talk about working on their shadow selves. And as soon as I get done with that work, then I will be an authentic yogi or an authentic tantri or an authentic rope master or whatever it is that they're searching. But you're so right. Like it's the journey
Mm-hmm.
and being present inside the journey. That's where it's like these things that we're discovering, these things that interest us and that we want to grow with, right? The discovery
Mm-hmm.
is something that's beautiful, right? And that's part of your learning, right? But then like the learning is also beautiful and that's a part of that journey, right? And then the mastery and then the sharing, right? Like all these things that you'll miss because you're focused on something that doesn't really exist out there. Like you're trying to reach some goal and just missing all these things that that's gifted to you
Right.
during this journey.
Say, and even just the contentment and peace of like being where you're at. You're making me think of, you've heard the quote about like if you ask a monk like what do you do when you get to enlightenment, what happens after enlightenment? And they say chop wood, fetch water. Chop wood, fetch water. Then you find enlightenment, and then you go chop wood, fetch water. Like it's it's not, again, I think though, this is where spiritual escapism, we have to be so careful about that can happen in our lives where we dive into this stuff because we're trying to escape from the Saturnian, the responsibilities that exist in as part of being human. And I believe we're in Earth school, so that's kind of my framework of belief. But like these lessons and things we're experiencing here, we'll try to outrun them through spiritual materialism or spiritual escapism. And really that if you're dealing with shadows or you're dealing with struggles, it's actually one of the most beautiful parts of being human. And that when you can actually meet it with compassion versus having to conquer it or judge yourself as wrong or impure, but rather collaborate. What is that part of you teaching you? I think then we can resolve a lot more versus like all this avoidance or escapism that can happen. But Yeah, I try to really help people debunk out of the hierarchy stuff because we stay in these chronic patterns of giving someone else our power when really the practice is about union. It's coming back to the oneness and the wholeness that already exists in me that's also in you.
That's beautiful. Yeah, so that reminds me of one of the things in this journey that I discovered or that I figured out or whatever. There's like the self-loathing that people have, and I know that I wasn't alone in this, but just like because you're always striving to be better, because you're always striving to like be the higher self, like your body's never right, or your mind's never right, or your education's never right. Like you're always just like trying to be that better person. There becomes this feeling that you have inside that you're not doing enough, you're
Mm.
not working hard enough, you haven't reached the milestones that you need to work in, and it really does a number on your confidence, on your self-esteem, on on your own feelings. And through this journey, it's like I was able to recognize this, and for the first time in my 55 years, right, I actually like who I am. Like, I like everything about myself. I like the sound of my voice. I like the way my body looks. I like my personality. I like it that I'm strange and quirky and I have idiosyncrasies. I like everything about that. And that was not true even 2 years ago. I really had an issue with, the person that I was. I'm like, oh my God, I talk too much. Or, it's like I'd always like in a social situation, I'd be like, why did I say those things? Or I would, be worried that, people don't like me because I have these flaws, right? And through my journey, I was able to figure out, no, that I am who I am. And I like who I am. I really do. And, you
It's
know, deal with
it's
it.
so amazing how these practices get us there. And I feel like it's a moment where you realize you haven't been as hard on yourself. You're like, man, usually I don't. And you're like, actually, because I know for me over the years, and I gotta give thanks to Joy Tish a little bit for this because I'm like, I really believe a lot of our weird flaws and tendencies are actually superpowers, and in a lot of ways, where as we collaborate with those superpowers, they become medicine, whether it's potent to the world or something for someone else. Again, I could spend a long time going into that, but the point is that our uniqueness is what shapes us, and it's hard to when we're constantly pressured to fit in and belong. It can really get so loud where we don't hear our own voice anymore. So these practices, we get to kind of reconcile those things, and I love that. Oh my goodness, this has been so good, Lando. I am so grateful that you're sharing and here. I know we're coming to the top of the hour, but I would love before we
Oh,
close if you,
goodness.
I know I was
All right. We didn't even get
like,
started.
I know, right? I feel we might just have to have you come back on in a few
Okay.
months and do something again. But so for yoga teachers, is there any advice you would give new yoga teachers if as they're getting started in the business of yoga or getting into finding their passions with this stuff?
Oh, just be open. Be open to all experiences. If any opportunity comes to you, just jump at it. Take advantage of it. You never know where it could lead. You might figure out like, what's the worst that can happen, right? Like, oh, I don't like this, right? This is not my cup of tea. Or you might discover something, oh my gosh, this is life changing. This is something that I want to share with other people. So, and it could be anything. It could be like a workshop. It could be teaching a specific class that challenges you, maybe learning a new skill. Um, just always try and expand your horizons. Don't stay stagnant, you know, be open-minded to new ideas and new ways of thinking, and you'll be great.
I love that. It's so true that sometimes just like you don't know what you like until you experience what you don't, but you're never going to know what you don't if you don't give anything a try. I think teachers can get, or new teachers can paralyze themselves with a lot of what we were talking about earlier. And being able to trust that you can't get it wrong because what's for you will not miss you. And I look back in my career, and that's very much been the case. A lot of the biggest heartbreaks and things that I was just, leaving claw marks on was the greatest gift of it leaving my life or that it not happening. And then some of the weirdest things that I'm like, I don't know, this might be a total waste of my time, but I'll be curious, turn into the biggest opportunities. So it's so true.
It
So,
is. It is.
well, as we close, if anybody wanted to learn more about House of Rhythm or your work, where can they find you guys?
Okay, so we post a lot of things on Instagram. So that's at House of Rhythm. Uh, our website is houseofrhythm.com. And if anybody wants to connect with me on Instagram or on socials, I'm on Instagram under Lando Esteban. So Landoesteban. We're starting our YTT at House of Rhythm, and that our big focus is that you're going to be ready to lead a class at the end of it. Like you can just jump right in. I'm going to be teaching a little bit of music, a little bit of breath work, but we have an excellent staff and teachers that are ready to mold the new generation of yoga teachers. And I'm really excited about that. So our 200 hours coming up. We have a retreat that's coming up going to Ireland, and that's coming up in September. That's going to be so much fun.
Oh, fun.
And it's going to be great. And if you want to come experience somatic breathwork, I do a quarterly workshop at House of Rhythm, but I also offer a somatic reset. It's somatic Sundays, every other Sunday at House of Rhythm at 5:30. So if you'd like to come experience it, um, maybe respond with just say that you heard me on your podcast, and I would love to treat you to a class.
Ooh, that's
So,
amazing. Thank you for offering that to them. And
oh
de-
yeah.
be sure to go check out House of Rhythm. And we just love them
Oh,
so much. And Lando, it is amazing to see you. And thank you for taking time today.
thank you, Mel.